doesn't care. We've talked about this.
Yeah, we have talked about it.
You were surprised when I said like max 2 a day.
Yeah, I mean, that seems too little.
I'm not sure how you could gain any weight whatsoever at that rate.
I just eat a lot.
Well, that's probably why, dude. If you're just crushing food.
Yeah.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stochastic.com NFL Live Before Lock. Very special show today. 2-game Monday night slate. We really should just petition to get Monday nights, like 2 games every Monday. I don't even care if it's a 7 and 8 or a 7 and 9. It doesn't have to be a 7 and then a 10, like a legitimate doubleheader. I probably won't be able to stay up to the end of that anyway. Give me these 2 games. Give me 2-game slates. Chop one off the top on Sunday, Neil, and give us 2 Monday night games every week. You know how sweet that would be? It
would be sweet. I think I saw that we have it next week too. I saw somebody reference that we have. I haven't actually fact checked it, but I thought I saw somebody say that we have a 2-gamer next Monday as well.
Well, now I must investigate. Let's see. Week Trey. Oh, we do.
Yeah.
Get out of town.
Right
Eagles,
on.
Bucks, Rams, Bengals.
Eagles,
That's
Bucks.
awesome.
Interesting.
I mean, wouldn't anybody kind of be all about this?
Yeah. So the person who had said was complaining about it because he's a very advanced player whose process does not account for 2-game slate. So he's very good at showdown. He wants just the maximized showdown where it's 500,000 million to first. So but that's like 3 people on the planet have that concern.
Yeah. But I personally love the 2 and 3 game slates. I don't know what for football, not for basketball, not for football. I
do too. I love it. Yeah.
Right. There's something really cool about a 2-game slate. It's not a showdown, but it's not a 12-gamer. It's just, it's completely, it's its own entity. And I find the strategy discussion surrounding it and just everything that goes into it so much more interesting than anything else. So yeah.
Yeah. No,
we got one next week.
Probably my favorite. I mean, I know you've been doing the podcast for the afternoon slates. That is my first ever 6-figure win in DFS across any sport was an afternoon only NFL slate. I don't remember exactly. It might have been 3 games, might have been 2, but it's always been something that I find to be one of the more interesting things to like just talk about the game theory to strategize around different ownerships. Yeah, it's my favorite.
So fun. Yeah, Neil was telling me before the show that he freely and willingly will just fire off a dump in a porta potty or in any public space.
It's not that I want to. I'm just willing. Like I know I would rather relieve myself than hold it. It's just like it's a different. I would rather relieve myself and be comfortable. I'm going to be uncomfortable while I'm in the porta potty, but after that, I'm good.
I think just over the years, my body and brain have a connection where it's like you're leaving the house. All right, do it now or forever hold your dump because I'm not doing it and. I could not tell you the last time in a public place. I mean,
we're the exact opposite. I have no shame about going to the public place.
I love it. That's Neil Orfield at Player Q DFS on Twitter. I'm Dave. How about that for an introduction?
That was great. He'll shit anywhere.
Yeah. There's your clip, Jordan. We call him the Showdown Shaman, but I think this fella knows his way around the 2-game slate as well. I'm Dave Loughran at Lafayette_D on Twitter or the X, LOUGHY_D. Hit your boys up. Let's talk shop throughout the NFL season and have some fun. Yeah, I mean, that's crazy to think that people had outhouses and some people still do. Man, without plumbing, like legitimate plumbing, I don't know how we did. We're the most spoiled generation of all time.
We are so spoiled. Yeah.
We are so spoiled. Yeah. We have it so easy. Why is it that we make things so hard? Who knows?
Man, getting philosophical on for this 2-gamer.
How's this for a segue? What do you say we make this slate as easy as possible, Neil? And dive
into it. Yeah.
Let's make it happen. So 2 game Zachary Henry.
I missed it.
The showdown shit, man.
It works. It fits. I got to admit. It fits.
All right, so we got 2 games, and the funny thing is that we have 2 games under 40-point totals, Neil.
Yeah.
Mentioned this on the strategy show with Matt Kajeski today that in the Cleveland and Pittsburgh game, the highest player prop, receiving yards prop, for anyone was 42 or 43.5 yards for anyone in the game.
In the Cleveland-Pittsburgh game?
Yeah.
Must have been George Pickens, I would assume.
Yep. Pickens was the highest. Elijah Moore was at 41.5. Seemed like a pretty decent spot. And then you're talking about like DPJ. Freiermuth was at 36.5, right? Who else?
Well,
Njoku probably around 30. What's that?
So you were looking at it this morning before we got news that Amari Cooper might be playing now. So that's gonna change things a bit.
Yeah, that throws a bit of a wrench into the works, because you know what issue I have with this is we've seen this stuff before where these guys play and they're just a shell of themselves.
True. I mean, we saw the T. Higgins was that, I forget what. It was Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, where he was just like, yeah, he's good to go, and then just like didn't play or barely played.
Yep. You know what team used to do that a lot was the Falcons with Julio Jones. They just straight decoy him for the whole game.
Yep.
And then, they did it with Calvin Johnson in Detroit before.
I was just thinking about, we just saw it, but no, it was actually Christian Darrisaw. The Vikings, he was active for the Thursday Night Football game. And then he didn't play at all. I don't think he played a single snap. Maybe he played at the beginning, but did not end up playing offensive lineman for the Vikings. Christian Darrisaw was surprisingly active, and I was like, all right, maybe they're gonna have a better offensive line than I thought. And then he didn't play.
Well, you were right about Swift. It wasn't good for your Vikings, but
no, it was not great for my Vikings. Yeah,
that was such a weird situation, because I'm still curious. Obviously Rashad Penny's dead. I've given up the dream.
Apparently, yeah. What is that all about?
Dead and buried. Although I thought it was so dumb that people blamed that holding call on him. There were two monsters coming at Jalen Hurts, and his only option was to was to grab one of them. You saw that, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to. Like, that is the better option. Yeah.
Oh, they wiped out a touchdown. Yeah. Well, Hurts would have been dead.
Right.
Actually dead. But what would have happened? And we're going to get into this slate, but we had to recap because I had told you objectively, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. What would have happened if Boston Scott didn't get hurt?
I don't think we would have seen Penny. Like, I legitimately, I'm at least not confident that we would have. It didn't seem like it was going to. Yeah, I
think you're right. But yeah, it was a weird one. Swift was fantastic, and now we'll see what happens with Cooper. Nathan, I agree with you. Cooper could play 20 snaps, but the whole doubtful to gonna warm up and see how he feels, to there's optimism that he's gonna play. On a 2-game slate, maybe we should just lead with this, and then we'll go position by position here.
Sure.
Because we have plenty of time on this. We got till 7:15 if we need it. And shout out to Chris again for the, was it Chris with the free membersps, gifting the
Chris
memberships?
Williams, our Apple guy, probably. I haven't double checked.
Well, I didn't even see the name, and I just
he just always does. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just say Amari Cooper is in. How are you playing this? I know it's a tough question, but we need to lead with this part of the show.
Yeah, I mean, so it kind of depends on how the report comes up. Like, if the only news that we get is Amari Cooper is playing, he's active.
Let's just say he's in. Yeah.
I'm gonna be playing some Amari Cooper. It's also the second game, so a lot of people are gonna build out their lineups assuming that he's out. So I think if he ends up in, I mean, we currently don't have an ownership projection for him. Maybe I need to update, but currently we don't have. But I think that he'll come in a little bit lower owned than he should, regardless, because people are going to build out, assuming that he's out or assuming that he's limited. So my guess is that he's going to come in fairly low ownership. I mean, that's really what it all comes out. Like, it's very hard to predict what his ownership is going to be with his status up in the air right now. And with the timing of these games being 1 hour apart, like, you never see that in the NFL, games starting 1 hour apart. So we're going to get this news half an hour before the first game starts. We're going to find out during the show. We're going to find out if Amari Cooper is inactive. Right. So yeah, we will find out during the show, and we'll be able to kind of react to that news. But even still, it's going to be hard to really predict ownership even after we get that news, because it's just so hard to know how much of the field is paying close attention, how much of the field is just like, I made my lineups, I got to go to work. They have, a night job. They can't check their lineups later, and they're just going to say, screw it, I'm not going to play him and hope that he's out. It's hard to predict ownership, but if he's going to come in 15% owned, he's a slam dunk. If he's going to come in 40% owned and he might be limited, then he's not somebody that you're going to want to have in a lot of lineups. So it is honestly a very hard topic to talk about, because there's so much up in the air. And if we just knew the ownership, or like had a great ownership projection, great idea, it would be easier to talk about. But honestly, I don't have much of a clue how owned he's going to be once we get the news. So hopefully after we get that news, we'll get an ownership projection update, be able to talk about it with a little bit more info.
We should have it by what, 6:45?
Yeah, so it should. Yep, 6:45. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, 6:45 is better than nothing, right? That'll still give us 30
Yeah,
minutes to make some decisions. You and I
exactly.
can revisit that. We'll have to. Once we get that news, we'll revisit. I mean, if he's out, it's Elijah Moore, it's DPJ. Those guys look a lot better.
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
just a
exactly.
fact.
And then you're thinking about Cedric Tillman. You're thinking about David Bell at that
Yep.
point. Yeah,
Yeah, I
changes
probably
everything.
won't be thinking about David Bell, but I get your point.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Right. Fair.
But yeah, Cedric Tillman for sure. You have no idea what happens there. Does Njoku look a little better? Probably.
Yep.
I mean, Nick Chubb already looks fantastic.
Yeah, Nick Chubb is a slam dunk.
He's a stud. Yeah, well, let's go to quarterbacks and kick it off. By the way, haven't even asked yet. So I appreciate the 119 of you who have hit that thumbs up as you walked in the virtual door here. It's greatly appreciated. I mean it. And those of you who have already subscribed to the channel, you're the best. You help us keep the lights on around here. But Neil, I'm gonna get a little ballsy today and say we cross 500 again.
You think so?
Yeah, why not?
I don't know. I
Someone's
just
gotta be
don't
an
know that we can
optimist.
do it twice. I mean, yeah, I guess somebody does. I don't have a lot of faith. 500 seems optimistic. What are we at right now?
159.
What, I mean, that's over 300 away. There is no chance that we have 300 viewers who are going to be able to find that like button between now and an hour from now. Come on.
I have faith in the people, brother. I do.
I know you do. I know you do.
I
You're an eternal optimist.
I save my pessimism. I'll save my pessimism for around 720
Sure,
after the
okay.
first touchdown.
That's fair. Yeah. Good approach.
But I'll stay positive for this show because I like these people and they support us. All right. Let's talk some quarterbacks here. So we have Deshaun Watson, who may or may be without Amari Cooper. You have Derek Carr, who has, if Cooper sits, Derek Carr would have the two highest priced wide receivers on this slate on his team. And then you've got Kenny Pickett, who I actually find at least remotely interesting here, despite Deontay Johnson being out and unfortunately landing on the IR. And then, well, God, this is so ugly, dude. This is so bad. Bryce Young, Deshaun Watson, Derek Carr, and Kenny Pickett. I think all of them are viable. The whole Bryce Young thing in week one, I'm not at all surprised to see that. Number one overall draft picks are like, if you look at their records since the last 2 decades, Neil, number one overall draft pick quarterbacks who have started in their first game, I think one of them has won in week one. So it's not a shock. Right? Yeah, it's a crazy stat. It's a really crazy stat. And I think Atlanta's at least a decent enough football team. They made life difficult, but we'll start with Deshaun Watson. Ownership right now has him as the highest owned quarterback at 35%. He's basically neck and neck with Derek Carr, so I don't want to ignore that. Kenny Pickett's at 23%. Bryce Young is trailing the pack at around 9%. So just to set this up for you guys, what we're looking at as far as quarterback ownership goes, the two highest are Carr and Watson. Pickett's not unowned at all. And then Bryce Young is the guy that's going pretty much overlooked.
It's tough. So, man, I wish that Bryce Young was not facing this New Orleans pass defense. It makes it, because I do have interest at a really low owned Bryce Young. I still think, it's early enough in his career. We don't really know what to expect from him. Maybe he bounces back in week 2, but then he's facing this New Orleans secondary that is ranked 3rd in terms of pass DVOA. Just not a great spot for Bryce Young. Yeah, I mean, I think you gave a great breakdown there of the quarterbacks. I was honestly surprised to see that we have Derek Carr optimal more frequently than Deshaun Watson. I guess he's 400 cheaper, and as you said, he has the two most obvious pass catchers on the slate. If Amari Cooper is out, or he has the best tandem, I would say, in terms of pass catchers with Michael Thomas and Chris Olave. So I guess it makes sense. But Deshaun Watson still, I think, since he's been in Cleveland, he's been rushing for, I think, a little bit over 30 yards per game. So like the rushing is still there for Deshaun Watson more so than anybody else on this slate. Yeah, we have Carr and Watson at similar ownership. I guess with Carr being a little bit cheaper, it makes sense that he's coming in at similar ownership. I think Watson probably my favorite quarterback on the slate in a vacuum, just because he does have that rushing upside, has some interesting passing weapons, regardless of whether Amari Cooper plays. Even if Cooper's out, I think Njoku and Elijah Moore are, very solid passing options, and DPJ, you can throw him in there. So yeah, I think, we're getting 35% ownership to both Derek Carr and Deshaun Watson. Feels about right. We have them both slightly over-owned in the boom bust tool. They both look that their optimal odds are slightly lower than their ownership, but honestly, it's very close. Kenny Pickett, yeah, he's 5,400, nice price savings, 1,000 off of Deshaun Watson. Also has at least a little bit of rushing upside, not a ton, hasn't shown a ton of rushing upside, but we have him with some positive leverage. And then Bryce Young, we have it just 8% ownership. That kind of shocked me when I saw that Bryce Young is coming in at 8% ownership, but he does have the tough matchup. He's actually more expensive than Kenny Pickett, which also kind of surprised me. But we do have some positive leverage on Bryce Young. Also, we have him with a 10% chance of being optimal. I think I'm going to be playing all four of these quarterbacks. Probably going to be overweight to the field on Bryce Young and Kenny Pickett. Probably going to be a little bit underweight to the field ultimately on Deshaun Watson and Derek Carr, but not by any meaningful amount. I think that they're all very much in play in, like, you're building different lineups with each of them. I'm still stacking on this slate. Before I think somebody might have already asked if you're like bothering stacking on a 2-game slate. I'm still forcing in the stack. Like, it would probably come in naturally anyway, but I am still forcing in the stack with all of these quarterbacks. But I did say with both Kenny Pickett and Bryce Young, I allowed for the potentially only stacking with the running back. So with Deshaun Watson, I required passing to a wide receiver or a tight end because Nick Chubb just doesn't catch the ball enough. And then same thing with Derek Carr. I didn't like, because Jamal Williams, not much of a pass catcher. So I did open it up to stacking with the running back for Bryce Young and Kenny Pickett, but I'm still forcing the stack.
Nick Chubb did at least have 4 targets last game and
True.
got the only targets. But yes, I agree. It's not like a highly prolific pass catching backfield there. Is it fair to say you're not forcing run backs on this slate?
Yeah, I'm not forcing run backs.
Yeah, because you're naturally just gonna get so much of that anyway.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I thought about doing, and I heard you and Gajeski talk about it this morning, that you can leave salary on the table on the slate, like, because we don't really have many studs you want to pay up for. There's Nick Chubb, there's Chris Olave. We don't have a ton of expensive players on this slate. So I think that it does make sense to leave some salary on this slate. I don't usually force it. I don't think I'm actually going to force it here, but if I were hand building, I might be more inclined to run out a lineup that is leaving a little bit of salary on the table, just because, we've got the studs in Olave and Chubb, but like, for the most part, we've got a lot of value that looks, doesn't project all that differently than the guys who are a little bit more expensive.
Tokyo Swan said Steelers haven't lost a Monday Night Football game at home since 1991. Is that true?
That can't be true.
That'd be crazy.
That is nuts.
Damn. Thanks, Lance Dunbar's burner. What a kind thing to say. I agree, by the way. Yeah, so it's just a weird one where the run backs, whatever. Another reason for this, it's not even like you go, hey, this one game has a 49 total and this is at 38. One's at 39.5 and one's at 38, Neil. Neither of these games could they shoot out? Who the hell knows? It's the yes, Atlanta Green Bay shot out yesterday. I don't think anyone expected that to happen, right? I know I didn't. And by shot out, you know what I mean? Like, still 49 points for that game. Wasn't it like 25-24 or something? It's a lot of points for a game that had a 39-point total. So, it's soared over. There's some of those. I would say a couple things. One, don't force the run back. No need for that. You're going to get it anyway. But two, how many players are you comfortable playing against a defense? Are you setting something to where you can only have a certain amount against your D?
I believe I set it to the max. But I think maybe I set it to 4 players against my defense max. Maybe I didn't set it all the way to 6. I don't think it really matters all that much. So I think you can play defensive players against your offensive players, including the quarterback, on a 2-game slate. Like, it's more like showdown, I would say, than a main slate. On a main slate, I don't allow for any players against my defense. On a 2-game slate, I feel like it's a little bit closer to showdown, where I'm willing to just play a defense against an onslaught from the other team. And you're just hoping for a touchdown ultimately in that case. Like, the only way they're both the defense and 4 or 5 opposing players are going to pay off is if that defense scores a touchdown. But it's a 2-game slate. You need something to go weird to make money on a 2-game slate, regardless.
For sure. The only thing I was wondering, though, is on a night where all 4 defenses, I think, are 100% viable, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Cleveland, all of them, New Orleans, the whole like maxing the run backs against the defense, do you think it's necessary because you could play any of these defense and have relative confidence? Or is it really, like you said, just an instance of it's a 2-game slate? I don't mind being weird, especially if they score a touchdown. Because, you see teams score 2 defensive touchdowns and then the other team has to throw the whole damn game as a result. And then they pad those stats and it ends up being an optimal defense, but the quarterback also racks up 302,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm going to set it to max of 6 players against my defense. So it is the maximum possible. I don't think it's going to come up that much anyway in my lineups. But yeah, I think that it's more like Showdown where you do want to get a little bit weird. So intuitive, it's kind of counterintuitive. A lot of people will say, well, if the defense does well, that means the opposing offense is not going to do well. I think on a 2-game slate like this, you do kind of need to get weird, find different ways to get weird. And I think that's one of the better ways to get weird is to have an onslaught against the opposing defense. So again, it's not something I'm forcing in. I'm not like telling I'm not telling Fantasy Cruncher to always play the defense against multiple players from the opposing team, but I'm allowing for it just as one more way to potentially get different, even though there is obviously some negative correlation in terms of the potential fantasy points.
Nate D, Lavi, do you normally sort by, I assume that means by sim percentage? I need someone else's take. Thanks, man. Yeah. I mean, obviously when it comes to the the simulated ROI, that is what you're looking for. Right. But there's other ways like you can go in under exposures and you can do ROI boosts or D boosts and stuff like that. There's a lot of different ways you can play with that. So if you were looking to, favorite 150 lineups, but there's certain spots you just don't love, I wouldn't recommend messing with it too much, but you can do that. Or like if there's a stack that you really want and you're not getting any of it, the way that you would do that, obviously, you just like filter by the stack. You go into filters and then find the highest simulated ROI stack of the team that you like. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. You don't want to play around too much, but I know a lot of you guys got the free week or the free month from Owner's Box. And I saw a question earlier asking about the link. The link to that's in the description. Jordan can throw it in the chat. You get if you're new to the show, if you're new to the channel, or if you're just coming back for the first time this season, welcome first of all. But yeah, Owner's Box. We partnered with them. They got a $500 first match deposit bonus. They have Superflex DFS contest, which means 2 flex and a Superflex, where in the Superflex you can play a quarterback. So you can have some crazy stack types. It's awesome. And as Ben likes to say, it's a completely unsolved format up until this point. Not only that, they've got a overlay. Big overlay yesterday. Yesterday. $50,000 up top. It was $175,000 prize pool. And not to bury the lead, you're getting all of our NFL content for the entire week, 100% free. I saw someone earlier on Twitter that was like, he was attributing greed to the fact that we went to a new model.
I saw that too.
But it's silly because before, if you had gotten like the premium NFL, then you would still have to get something to build those lineups out to properly utilize like ownership and top stacks. And then if you wanted the sims, you would have had to pay additional for that for the month, which is way more expensive than this is, because you're getting the sims tool, the contest generator, the pre-contest sim, post-contest sim, ownership, player projections, top stack, all of our showdown stuff, premium Discord, lineup generator, the list goes on. It's free for the entirety of the week, guys. You sign up on Owner's Box, take advantage of those great contests and that $500 deposit bonus. However, you only have to, minimum deposit's $10 to get the first week entirely free. I'd recommend maxing it if you have the ability, because that type of money is good money, the stuff you don't have to do anything for. But if you want it, link in the description and chat, check out all of our tools, get them entirely for free for the full week. You do it today, Neil. And if you do it, I could hit up our guys in customer service. Maybe they'd be able to set you up if you emailed them now. You'd be getting Monday night slate with 2 showdowns, Thursday night, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, and Monday night doubleheader again next week. It's a good time to do it.
Yep. I saw MJP in chat asking if you could get it set up before probably not within the next half hour before these games start, but you could try email and support. That's going to be your best chance.
Is our boy El Negro Loco in here? Is Ron in here? News God?
He was in here earlier. I don't know if he still is. Probably.
Huh. Brian Lafayette, you're the only other person I've heard pronounce Burry correctly. Props for that, bro. You guys
Burry?
know I pronounce things
like
the way
burying the lead. Come on.
How
that is not the correct Berry.
Okay. See, strawberries.
Here's the thing. I grew up in a society.
Strawberry.
I grew up in a society. Everybody in my society says Barry. You bury the lead. Everybody I've ever met says Barry, until I met Lofty, who just decided, no, everybody in the world is wrong. I'm going to say it this. It's whatever you say it, how people are going to understand you.
Well, they're morons. All right. Dude, yeah, I'll say it the way people are going to understand me. It's spelled Bury.
I mean, I do understand you. So in this case, it's fair. It's fine.
Just like people pronounce tournament.
It's another weird one.
What on God's green earth is going on? Anyway, let's listen, dude. My dad and my mom, it was Wooder. You've come from this. They were both born and raised
Wooderice there in Philly.
Yeah, they're born and raised in Philly.
Yeah.
My daughter now, I'm done after this, guys. But my daughter, when my mother or father-in-law, when they'd be like, do you want some water? She goes, she's 2 years old. She's like, no, it's water, which is hilarious.
That is great.
But there's some weird stuff around here. Anyway.
Do you like Rita's Wooderice?
That's what I say, water ice.
We got, you do. Okay. We got that here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine who's from Philly, who I used to work with, invited me out to get some Rita's Wooderice, which is just a weird thing to call. Anyway, we can move on.
All right. Anyway, let's talk running backs here. Link for owners. Ron, what I was going to ask is if people signed up now, like and deposited right now, do you have a cutoff for when we could get them in the door? If you can't do it, it's fine, but let them know in chat and I'll let them know because links in the description and chat. Getting that owner's box now is huge, just given that you have so many damn slates. All right, I like for the entirety of the week. All right, and yeah, no problem, Mitchell. Thanks for being here. Let's talk running backs. Looking at this running back position, and we'll keep an eye out for Amari Cooper, guys. We're paying close attention to injury news for sure. Looking at running backs, you have Chubb at the top, far and away the best option. Like if anybody wants to dispute that, you know how I said people that pronounce things the way that they just shouldn't, they're morons. Be a moron to say that anybody other than Nick Chubb is the best option on the slate. Does that mean that one of these guys can't be the highest scoring option on the slate? Of course not. Yes, they can. But Nick Chubb, by far the best running back on the slate, without question, because you get to Najee Harris and you get to Jaylen Warren. Who knows who's going to be there? The only other question now is with Kendrick Miller ruled out, Jamal Williams is at least going to see a sizable workload. That's good.
Yep.
In a much better matchup than he had last week against that New Orleans or that Tennessee front that shut him down and then made Joshua Kelly a real regret for many of us. So let's start with Chubb, then we can work down a little bit. But do you have disagreements with me that he is the best running back option on the slate?
No, I think he's pretty clearly the best running back option on the slate in a great spot. Like Miles Sanders, yeah, he's got great usage last week. I was happy to see the usage that Miles Sanders got, but also it's a tough matchup with New Orleans. We do have them very similar in terms of optimal odds. So when you factor in the price, they're actually very similar. We have both Nick Chubb and Miles Sanders with a 64% chance of being optimal. So from some standpoints, you could make the argument like Miles Sanders is less negatively leveraged than Nick Chubb. We have Nick Chubb at 84% projected ownership to Miles Sanders 68. And again, we have both of them in the optimal about 64% of the time. But just from a pure projection standpoint, Nick Chubb clearly the top dog on the slate in a better matchup than Miles Sanders. So yeah, I agree with you on a slate where like really salary is not a huge issue here. I think Nick Chubb is going to be, I'm probably going to be close to the field. I think I'm going to come in a little bit underweight to the 84% that the field is getting to Nick Chubb, but not too far off of it. I think that he's just, I mean, he's arguably the best pure runner in the NFL, which I guess doesn't really matter for DFS purposes. But yeah, he's going to get the opportunities. We know he's going to get the opportunities. He's got a fine matchup with Pittsburgh. So yeah, I think I'm with you. Nick Chubb, the number one option on the slate, followed by Miles Sanders. Both have somewhat negative leverage, so you got to keep that in mind. If you want to find some positive leverage, you got to go a little bit cheaper. We got Najee Harris, 21% projected ownership. That's where he becomes spicy. Like Najee Harris seems to be losing a lot of workload to Jaylen Warren, but at 21% ownership with a 41% chance of being optimal, Najee Harris in a pretty good matchup too with Cleveland. Najee Harris does interest me. Jaylen Warren also interests me a bit. As you said, Jamal Williams is possibly going to be the only active. I mean, I know they activated Tony Jones, but the only running back that is really used for New Orleans, and of course facing Carolina, not the worst matchup in the world. So it's an interesting slate from a running back standpoint. But like if I had to rank them from like likelihood of being the best run, putting up the most fantasy points, it would be Chubb, Sanders, Williams, Harris. I mean, it's kind of in the order that you'd expect. Chubb, Sanders, Williams, Harris, Warren, Chubbard, Ford is probably that is. I'm just reading straight down our optimal odds, and I was trying to find a spot to disagree with it, but I don't disagree with that. I think that we've got it just in the correct order there.
Where are you finding our optimal odds for these guys on the 2-game slate?
The boom bust tool.
We got it updated. Sweet. Okay.
Yeah. We've got the boom. So yeah, we've got, and I can tell you, we've got Nick Chubb 64%, Miles Sanders 64%. Then it drops down a good bit to Jamal Sanders 44%, Najee Harris 41%, Jalen Warren 16%, Chuba Hubbard 13%, and then Jerome Ford 3% chance of being optimal.
Let me ask you a question. If you were to say, I'm going to go wash my clothes, how would you say it?
I'm going to go wash my clothes.
I fucking knew it, dude. That is the best.
No, I say wash like a normal person.
Oh, you do?
Wash is not a Minnesota thing. No. I can't remember where that. I can't think of what region that is. No, I say wash.
I thought it was a Midwest thing.
No. I think it's like Rhode Island.
You're not really Midwest, but you know what I mean. Like it's
no. Minnesota is Midwest. What are you saying, Jordan?
Jersey?
I was thinking Rhode Island might say wash. I feel like my friend from Rhode Island says wash, but not sure.
Is Minnesota considered Midwest? I always thought of Midwest. It like more of the southern states in the middle of the.
No, we're definitely Midwest. Yeah, yes, I'm sure.
What do you call a? No, I believe you. What kind of drink would you say a Coke or a Pepsi is?
So I lived on the East Coast long enough to like I say soda now. It's funny. So I went to school in Boston. I went to Tufts University in Boston. A friend of mine from high school actually followed me to. Actually, he wasn't a friend of mine. Anyway, a guy that I knew in high school ended up coming to Tufts as well. And when he was a pre-frosh, we went to a pizza place and he tried to order like just like a soda fountain. And he kept on saying like, yeah, and I want a pop too. And they did not understand him. So like they beat it out of you calling it a pop in Boston. You learn to just call it a soda so that people will understand you. But it was funny. He ultimately gave up, did not get his soda because he kept on calling it pop. They could not understand what he was saying. And he was just like, I'll get a water.
Oh, that's ridiculous. He could have just been like the thing that a Coke or a Pepsi. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's so ridiculous.
What'd you call him? A pre what?
Before his freshman year. So I was on the cross country and track team. He was going to be part of the team. So before he was actually on the team. So he was a senior in high school visiting us, looking at Tufts. So he was we call him pre-frosh. Pre-frosh, yeah.
Interesting. All right. With Kendra Miller, I think the Kendra Miller news is significant. Not as I don't really know how involved Tony Jones Jr. is going to be. Last week he had what, like one touch,
one carry, I believe. Yep.
One carry for 5 yards. It was clearly Jamal Williams' backfield without question. You're looking at snap counts there. It was 75% to Williams, 11%, only 7 snaps to Tony Jones. Wasn't targeted in the passing game. These are the only 2 active running backs in this game, though. So Jamal Williams, because of that, looks really good. He's one of the only 2 active running backs. Who knows? Maybe he has a Zach Moss type role.
Sure.
Right? I don't know. It's possible. Zach Moss had all of the touches last game. Played
Jordan Klein, breaking news to us.
You got it? 1 second. And then maybe Tony Jones gets out there for a little bit, but would you play Tony Jones?
I don't think I'm going to be playing Tony Jones. Is he even in the player pool? I don't see him in my. Oh yeah, here he is. Okay. I don't think I'm going to get to Tony Jones. I don't think that it's totally crazy in the largest field GPP. Like if you are playing the Millie Maker, he's arguably in play, but I don't think I'm going to get there. Like he's 4,700. I think he needs even more than a touchdown to pay off his price tag, which weirder things like Jamal Williams could certainly get hurt in the first quarter. Tony Jones becomes the guy. It's just, I feel like it's a little bit of a tough play for me. I feel like there are enough other running backs that I'd rather get to. I guess you can make the case that like, it's possible that on a 2-game slate, none of the running backs put up more than like 8 fantasy points. And Tony Jones, if he comes in and puts up 4 or 5 would be enough. I don't think I'm going to play it that way. I think I'd rather get to the guys who have more likely roles like the Jerome Ford, Jalen Warren, Chuba Hubbard, the backups who are going to have bigger roles, I think. And I mean, he's not listed as a running back, but we just love Taysom out there at all times. We got to think about
Oh,
factor him
yes, we
into
do.
the running equation.
You just know that Taysom Hill's going to have that huge game.
Yeah, on this 2-game slate, this is when he's going to score 2 rushing touchdowns, throw another one, and just break the entire slate.
Yep. You just know it's coming because
Yep.
we've seen it more than once, right? And we've seen it on showdown slates, or sorry, on showdown or 2-game, like short slates. We've seen it many times. Yeah, it's possible. So do this before we move on to wide receiver. Now that we know breaking news. Thank you, Jordan, that Amari Cooper is in fact active. He will play. We'll see if we get any more updates on whether or not there are limitations here. But for now, we know he's playing with a groin injury. Oh God. I wish it was not a lower body injury, particularly a groin. Well, we'll talk wide receivers, but I want you to do this. At running back, just to help crystallize this and help the audience out a little bit. By the way, we're going to crush 500 likes, Neil. You pessimistic son of a bitch. You should get buried for that.
I should get buried for it.
Not buried. You should get buried. No, we're at almost 400. But anyway, if you were to rank your top running backs from Chubb, Harris, Williams, and Sanders, like for me, it would be Chubb, Williams, Sanders, Harris. And then if you had to rank the guys from Chuba Hubbard and down on this slate, Hubbard, Warren, Jones, Ford, those guys, I would go Warren, Hubbard, and yes, I think I would go Warren over Hubbard. That may be a hot take, but I would. And then I'd probably go Ford, Jones. What about you? And there's no one else really that I'm looking at.
Yeah, so I think that is pretty clearly Chubb number 1. I think that the most interesting part of the top 4 guys is Sanders versus Williams. You surprised me when you said Williams over Sanders. Then I think about it, I'm like, yeah, he does have a much better matchup. Like, I'd rather have the running back going against Carolina with like nobody that he's competing with than the running back who has some competition on his team.
Yeah, it's just matchup, and then it's also the fact that Tony Jones might only see 2 touches. That's kind of what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely can see Miles Sanders is a little bit cheaper at 5,400 or 5,700. I think you might be right though. I think it might be Chubb followed by Williams. Like, he's going to have the opportunities. Was not great last week, but this is a decent matchup with Carolina. Yeah, and coming in at lower ownership, 21% lower ownership than Miles Sanders, probably breaks the tie in favor of Jamal Williams. So I like that call. I think it is Chubb, Jamal Williams, Miles Sanders third, even though he has higher odds of being optimal. And then Najee fourth of that group. And then of the Warren, Hubbard, Ford group, I think Warren has the most reliable workload. Like, I think Warren would be number 1 for me. I don't know. Maybe we have Jerome Ford coming in with such little ownership. I might actually put Ford ahead of Chuba Hubbard. We've got him. Let me refresh this. This might be wrong because I'm seeing 0.1% projected ownership for Jerome Ford, and that seems wrong to me. It's got to be more than that. But at that ownership, that would break the tie for me in favor of Jerome Ford.
It's got to be higher. You're right.
Over Hubbard. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to.
I definitely don't think he's seeing 15 carries again. That was, in my estimation, a product of the game script in the second half there, as they were beating up on Cincy a bit. But
like, so I agree with you. In a different game script, you wouldn't. But like, is there any reason to think that they can't have that same game script? Like, I think that they showed that it is within the realm of possibilities for him in just like a regular. I mean, without an injury to Chubb, he could have 15 carries. Is within the realm of possibility. So just like a weird game script.
I think he's a lot more live than Tony Jones to get significant work in the backfield. If you know what I mean, if you wanted to look at it like that, I'm with you.
I guess we've got Chuba at really low ownership also. So I guess it's not a huge difference there. But I think that I slightly prefer Jerome Ford at even lower ownership against Pittsburgh than Chuba, but it is closer. Part of the problem with Chuba is even if he did see an injury to Miles Sanders, he is more expensive and he is facing New Orleans. So it's like he still comes into great. Now you're the lead back facing New Orleans. It just doesn't there's no possibility of him coming in and having a good matchup on an offense that you're expecting to score points. Whereas Jerome Ford has the out of, Nick Chubb gets hurt, and suddenly he is the lead back on an offense that should be able to score some points. So I think I slightly prefer Jerome Ford, but I think that he is a little bit like there's a higher likelihood that Hubbard scores more points, but I think Jerome Ford has higher smash possibility than Hubbard.
Smash is, I mean, he was wildly inefficient last game, but at the same time, if he gets some opportunities, then it's possible. 58% filled on owner's box. Oh, they got a 10K to first tonight. That's more than I thought it would be.
I didn't even look at it.
Yeah, 10K to first tonight for the Monday Blitz. 58% filled with what? 30 minutes to go. Our Sims tool works for owner's box. Our ownership, everything, projections got you covered for that, for Superflex if you're struggling with it and you're taking advantage of that free week. Just so you know, like all of our owner's box is built into all of our stuff. All right, wide receivers. Chris Olave and Michael Thomas. I like both of them. I love what I saw from Michael Thomas last game. Nothing spectacular, but he looked kind of like Michael Thomas, and that's really all I asked for. I know it was kind of a pass funnel spot against Tennessee, but you know what? I think Rashid Shaheed, particularly with JC Horn out of this game, that's significant too, because Shaheed is a guy that you and I were on a show last year where we're like, I don't know what to do with Shaheed. Who knows? Maybe we'll have a little bit. I swear to God, by the time we ended this show and like said our goodbyes afterwards in this call, I turned the TV on and Shaheed already had a 50-yard touchdown.
Yeah, it was like immediate. That's
you remember that?
Yeah. I think you might have talked me into Shaheed during that show. I think I might have been like, I don't really know what to do. And then you talked him up a little bit and talked me into it. And by the time we finished talking about it, he was a slam dunk for us, and people were tweeting at us about the great Shaheed call. So maybe
but
it could happen again.
There was also one where we said we weren't playing. I think was one, might not have been Shaheed, but I think it was where we said we weren't playing him. And
was it? Okay. Maybe
I think there were two. I think there were two, one on each side of the spectrum, end of the spectrum. But it's a good matchup for him, and he could break a slate even with 4 targets or something like that. So I kind of want to start with the passing game for the Saints here and work through some of these teams since a lot of them have injuries. Yeah, no, I think that the Saints are a great place to start. And I think that you nailed it. Like, I think Chris Olave is really good. We've also got him at 77% ownership. So the only real downside to Chris Olave is 77% ownership. We have him optimal 62% of the time. But I mean, he is of all these pass catchers, he is, I think, probably the most talented, going to have the most usage throughout the year. He's also the most expensive. So yeah, you can play Chris Olave. He looks great. Michael Thomas, I'm with you. I'm excited about Michael Thomas. He could have if he stays healthy all year. I think this could be a bounce back year for Michael Thomas, and he's just 5,500. Looks like a great play as well. 52% projected ownership, 46% chance to be an optimal. Shaheed, 4,200 actually kind of surprised me. He looked really good last week. I agree with you. He's very much in play. Definitely helps not having JC Horn out there for the Panthers. But yeah, that 4,200 price tag, like Shaheed is definitely a guy who can break a slate. He could also dud. Like he's got a pretty wide range of outcomes for Rashid Shaheed. So keep that in mind when you play him. But we've got him at 39% ownership, 36% chance to be an optimal. And he's the kind of player he's 4,200. It would just take one play to really pay off that price tag for Shaheed. So I think those are the only 3 wide receivers we really need to talk about for the Saints. Let me see if there's anybody. Yeah, I think it's really just those 3 that are in play for me. Agreed. Yeah. And then when you're talking about a team like Carolina, this is a mess. This is a real mess for a couple of reasons. One, DJ Shark is going to play. There's also thoughts that he might be limited.
Yep, they've said that. Yep.
That's not great. If he is, Matt Gajeski and I on this morning show kind of came to the conclusion, we could be wrong, obviously, but he kind of sold me that if somebody takes a haircut in this offense, it's probably Mingo over Terrace Marshall, over Adam Thielen. 2nd round rookie of Mingo didn't really impress last week, was targeted 5 times, but Shark was out. That would be my guess, that some of those snaps to Shark could eat into Jonathan Mingo's production or opportunities.
Yeah, pretty interesting looking at the snap shares last week. Terrace Marshall, I did not realize that he had played 90% of snaps last week.
Most on the team.
Yeah, it's by just one more than Adam Thielen at 88% and Jonathan Mingo at 87%. They all in succession. Just one fewer snaps for Mingo than Thielen, and Thielen than Terrace Marshall. But that is very interesting to see that Terrace Marshall actually had the highest snap count. I think that Marshall's still going to get some run, but so you think he's cutting into Mingo? You think it's funny because like coming into the year, it seemed like the top three were going to be DJ Chark, Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo were going to be the top three receivers
Yep.
for the Panthers. So it's kind of surprising to see Terrace Marshall play as much as he is. Kind of hard to really know exactly what's going to happen with DJ Chark coming in, who he's going to come in for, but would make sense, I think, for him to cut into potentially Jonathan Mingo. I could see him cutting into Terrace Marshall though. Also,
I could too, but the question was really like, who's the most likely in?
and you think it's Mingo?
Yeah, the thinking was Mingo, but who
I,
knows?
so my like first instinct would be that it would be Terrace Marshall that we cut into, but I think that it's one of those spots that it's really hard to know who's likeliest to lose snaps to DJ Chark coming back. I think that all are in play just because it is kind of a volatile situation when we really don't know who's going to lose snaps with Chark coming back, or even like how many snaps Chark is going to be out there. I think he's going to play some, but I really like how do you interpret the coach speak there of like he's going to be limited? Does that mean he's going to be limited to playing like 20 snaps, or I don't know. It's really hard. Or they're going to be like watching him to make sure that he's doing okay. It's a tough spot for these Carolina guys. Vegas, as you said, Vegas not really expecting much from anybody from Carolina. I think that they're all in play. You kind of probably need the touchdown from any one of them to really pay off the salary. I guess that they're cheap enough that maybe they could pay it off with just like 5 receptions for 70 yards or something. Ultimately, though, I don't know. Like, I don't really have a great way of differentiating between these Carolina guys. I think that they're all in play. I don't think any of them are like slam dunk great plays. We do have DJ Chark at just 6% ownership, Jonathan Mingo at 7%. So I guess because of the 15% ownership to Adam Thielen, he would be my least favorite of those three. But and Terrace Marshall, we don't have much ownership at all. So probably Thielen would be my least favorite just because of the ownership. But I think they all have pretty similar odds of succeeding, just like kind of in different ways.
Right. But it doesn't feel good. But Bryce Young's 8% owned. Like, I still want to take some shots on Bryce Young today. I don't know where you're at on it,
yeah,
but
100%.
I know how you play showdowns and short slates. I know you well enough that you'll have some Bryce Young today. Just by default, if he's going to be, a third the ownership of the second lowest owned quarterback.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just being that low owned, and as a rookie quarterback who was the first overall pick, like he's clearly got some talent. And he's cheap. He's cheap, and his pass catchers are cheap. So just doing the Carolina stack, you can save so much salary. You can throw Hayden Hurst into the stack. There's a lot of ways to go with Bryce Young. Has a little bit of rushing upside, not like elite rushing, but he has some rushing upside as well. So you could throw in the possibility of a rushing touchdown. Yeah, I'm definitely, I like the 8% ownership. Basically any quarterback, you can get an 8% ownership on a 2-game slate. I'm going to have some interest in, and then you throw in that he does have, the pedigree and cheap receivers. Yeah, I have interest there.
How do you want to break down these Browns receivers? That's the biggest question now with Amari Cooper active. I truly don't expect you to have a concrete answer in the sense of knowing what's going to happen. So it's more so, how do you intend on playing it? That's more important, because there's not a single person out there that could say, oh yeah, we know that Amari Cooper is going to be out there, not limited, or we know he's not going to be we know he's not going to be limited, but he's also going to be productive, or we know he's going to be limited and unproductive. Like, there's so many different ways that this can play out for him.
The team might not even know. I mean, he probably doesn't know. It probably is going to be a play it by ear kind of thing. How are you feeling throughout the game? We have currently Amari Cooper projected for 11% ownership. At 11% ownership, I am slamming Amari Cooper. I'm just hoping that he's out there. And even if he is limited, and they haven't really given us much info yet, even if he is a little bit limited, like if he's out there, he's going to be out there in red zone situations where you're going to score the most fantasy points. So yeah, I have a lot of interest in Amari Cooper. Could come back to bite me. It could be a T. Higgins situation where he barely plays, but we have him projected for 11% ownership, and he's probably the second best receiver on the slate in general. Yeah, I'm gonna be slamming Amari Cooper. That's probably gonna be one of my bigger stands on the slate, is that I'm gonna be playing a lot of Amari Cooper.
We're north of 2,500 people with us right now. How about that?
That's a lot of people. How many likes though?
We're 33 away from 500.
No way.
You still
yeah, I still don't think we're going to get there. 33 is, I mean, if people are capable of finding a like button, they would have found it by now. So I don't really think we're going to, like, the people who haven't already hit it aren't going to be able to find that like button.
We're going to cruise, baby. We're going to cruise past it. Have faith in the people. There we go. 500. Boom. It's done.
Wow,
It's
look
over.
at that.
We still got like 20 minutes to go here. So outside of Amari Cooper, someone asked, can I not play Elijah Mitchell now? I still think you can play
Yeah, Elijah Moore.
Elijah Moore. Can you play Elijah Mitchell, who was, dude, Christian McCaffrey's workload right now is ridiculous in San Francisco, but that'll be for tomorrow's first look show with Ben Ross and myself.
That's right.
Elijah Moore, I still think he's fine. Like, I still expect him to be out there a lot. That stuff to me is viable. I think Nick Chubb could hammer this team. They're down Hayward, which is big for them. That doesn't help whatsoever on the line. But yeah, do we really think they still have to play guys other than Amari Cooper? And Peoples-Jones, actually, DPJ played 89% of snaps, 69 to Moore, 62 to Cooper. And then Tillman, Bell, and Marquise Goodwin all played around 14, 15% each. So those are clearly still the three top guys. Also, what if Amari Cooper is limited? Or what if Amari Cooper is used as a decoy? I don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. But on a 2-game slate, if you play that avenue, then Eli Moore and DPJ might actually look better than they did before because their ownership's going to come down with Cooper active.
Yeah, exactly. I think both are still very much in play. To me, this hurts the Tillman David Bell tier more than it hurts DPJ and Elijah Moore. I think, as you said, like they were going to be in play for kind of different reasons, but now very much Pittsburgh could be double covering Amari Cooper. Maybe Elijah Moore is just that much more open. And both of these guys, both Elijah Moore and Donovan Peoples-Jones, have some splash play potential. I like both quite a bit. What do we have the ownership at? Actually, let me refresh my ownership here because I want to see if we've been, running up to lock. We changed things pretty quickly. Okay, updated 1 minute ago. So that is perfect. So let me double check what we have the ownership at now, because with the Amari Cooper thing changing, I imagine ownership also going to be changing. So now we have Elijah Moore, 33% ownership. We have DPJ, 13% ownership for DPJ at 3,700. Yeah, I'm still very interested in both of Donovan Peoples-Jones and Elijah Moore. A little bit less, like Elijah Moore, I think, was like the alpha. If Cooper was out, now he's clearly the wide receiver 2 for this team. But I still have some interest in Elijah Moore. But DPJ actually becomes, I think, more interested to me because the ownership goes down. He has the ability to pay it off with a single play, and 3,700. That's a juicy price tag. So yeah, I like these guys. I like both Elijah Moore and Donovan Peoples-Jones. I don't think I'm going to be going to David Bell at this point. Marquise Goodwin was active a good amount in the last game. What was it? We had Marquise Goodwin, I guess 14% snap. I was thinking he had more than that. So I guess he was not as active as I was anticipating he was. No, that was we were anticipating with Cooper out, he's going to play more. No longer that strong of a play, but I think that the top 3 are very, very much in play. Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, Cedric Tillman, David Bell, Marquise Goodwin. If you wanted to play one of them in a very large field GPP, it would probably be Marquise Goodwin for me, but none of them are. I don't feel really, really good about any of those clicks.
Let's hit some super chats here. We'll try and keep these quick, Neil. Jorge, thank you, Jorge, as always, brother. Appreciate you hanging out. My apologies if this was mentioned already, but what will be the stack size you will be going with in a 2-game slate? I mean, anything really. I don't know if there's real limitations on a 2-gamer.
I just set it at require one pass catcher for each quarterback.
No limit though, not capped at anything.
Yeah, either. I didn't cap it. Right. You could do. We've seen full onslaughts when we've seen. There was a slate a couple years ago where like 6 Bills on the same team, including the quarterback and the defense won. So yeah, I think that there's no.
I feel like it was a Christmas Day slate or something.
It might have been. Yeah, it might have been that.
Yeah, because you're talking about a short slate, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
Or it was a Saturday night slate. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. Jay, Neil, what's your Millie maker play? Mine is Tony Jones. Do you have one guy in the Millie that you're gonna be overweight on, or you think is going overlooked?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm going to be slamming Amari Cooper, but I don't think that's the kind of play he's looking for. Let me think. Who is my Millie play? I mean, DJ Chark at 6% projected ownership, even if he is limited, I think is pretty interesting. He has that just like one play could pay it off. I kind of like, actually, we didn't talk about him with Carolina. I was going to come back to him. Laviska Shenault, I think, is a guy that, he's gadgety. Carolina playing against a tough defense. We've seen him do it before, with just like, he doesn't play a ton, but just like the one play where they throw him the ball, a yard, like a lateral throw to Laviska and he takes it to the house. He's coming. We've got him projected for 2% ownership. I think that Laviska Shenault is a very good, like large field millie maker kind of play. So I'd throw him in there. And I mean, we talked about, what do we have Taysom at? 2% ownership. I think Taysom is another one of those guys that any given week, Taysom has the ability to completely break a slate wide open. So I'd throw him in there as well. So I think that those would be my answers. Laviska Shenault, Taysom Hill, guys that can break the slate at 0 ownership.
Malcolm asks, for quarterback, FanDuel and DraftKings, who are locked in for cash? Do you think you're locking in Watson, or do you think Carr is just as good a cash option there?
I think that they're either one of those two guys is very viable. We have Deshaun Watson projects slightly better, and he's also more expensive. So I think you could play either of them, whatever fits your build.
I think so too. Neil, would you allow 2 of the same team running back in lineups?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is similar to Showdown. You're just hoping like that one of these teams is able to run all over the other team and they can just intermix the running backs. Yeah, definitely. And it's going to go under-owned on a 2-game slate. So yeah, definitely viable.
Absolutely. Ryan's $5 single entry on DraftKings, 2,300 entries. Is 1,100 left over? Okay.
Wait, sorry.
Is $1,100 left over okay for a single entry DK tournament with 23,000 entries?
Yeah, absolutely.
And he asked, who's your top stack today?
Probably at this point, it would be Deshaun Watson to Amari Cooper.
Okay. Interesting. And last question, Riley Cooper, 14. Is he the real Riley Cooper? I don't know. Any love for Austin over 2.5 catches? It feels like it's where it should be, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, it feels about right.
Yeah. Any other receiver? Oh, Pittsburgh receivers. Just so we get everybody out in the required time and they get their lineups, and we still have 15 minutes. Let's do that. By the way, before or after these games start, if you still haven't gotten your $250 in bonus bets on Caesars, pretty good time to do it. Links in the description and in chat. You bet 50, you get 250 in bonus bets. 5 separate $50 bonus bets. You were going to bet the 50 somewhere anyway. You were going to take $50 at some point and you were going to put it on a team or a game or in a DFS contest or something like that. In this case, at least you're guaranteed to get $250 back in bonus bets. If you lose, that's okay. You got $250 in bonus bets. If you win, awesome. Now you got your bankroll boosted already, plus $250 in bonus bets. And unlike the deposit bonuses at certain books, if you win all these bonus bets, it's immediately withdrawable money. Like you can take it out. There's no playthrough. You win the bets, it's real money now. So people who talk, oh, it's bonus bets and not a bonus. No, bonus bets are a good thing if you win them. So win them. But yeah, 50 in the 250, 5 separate $50 bonus bets, win or lose, doesn't matter. If you were going to bet 50 or play 50 somewhere or spend it on something dumb that has no value outside of, this has value out of the gate, bolster your bankroll heading into week 2, week 3 of the season. Check it out. Link in the description and in chat. Turn your pop-up blockers off too. Something weird about this Caesars link, but if you turn it off, it works fine. Must be 21 years or older to gamble. If you or someone has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. What are you doing with Pittsburgh, Neil?
Yeah, so Pittsburgh, I think pretty clearly George Pickens very much in play. With Deontay Johnson being out, it's going to open up some other receiving options for Pittsburgh. We already mentioned Calvin Austin looked great. I think that people want to click the Calvin Austin more than they want to click Allen Robinson, just because Allen Robinson seems to be washed. But Allen Robinson played 89% of plays last week for the Steelers. Calvin Austin played 56%. So it seems as though Allen Robinson is the wide receiver 2 here for this week in Pittsburgh, as long as Deontay is out. Of course, that's based on last week. Things could change very quickly, but I think Allen Robinson is very much in play and probably going to be overlooked. We have him at 14% project ownership. I guess we have Calvin Austin at just 18% too. So neither of these guys getting a ton of ownership, but I think both are very interesting at low ownership here. Let me see if I'm playing any other Steelers receiver. It's clearly George Pickens, number 1. And then after George Pickens, to me, it is actually going to be Allen Robinson at lower ownership than Calvin Austin. But I think both are pretty similar plays in terms of like likelihood of success. It's just Allen Robinson is coming in at lower ownership and actually had the higher workload last week. So I think my preference would be Allen Robinson over Calvin Austin, but both very much in play.
Let's talk tight ends. I'm going to toss this over to you to make sure that everybody's in good shape heading into 7:15 lock here. And of course, we have showdown to all of our tools for showdown are up for this 8 o'clock game. So if you're looking to get the showdown, we got top single game plays tool, which is basically simulation in and of itself. Ownership projections for that. Sims tool is set up for that as well. So just so you know, after this locks, you got plenty of time to get all that action in. All of our links to everything for all of our packages and subscriptions are down there if you want to get in on that. But what are you doing at tight end? We don't have to go team by team here. It is ugly, man. And David Njoku looks worse if Amari's going to play as well.
True. Yeah. David Njoku does look worse. So we have Pat Freiermuth as our top projected tight end. We also have him at the most ownership. We have Freiermuth a little bit over owned, 46% projected ownership, 41% chance of being optimal. I feel like Freiermuth and Njoku are fairly similar, like in general. I don't know. They're guys that I have trouble differentiating between them in terms of range of outcomes. I feel like Njoku coming in at lower ownership makes me a little bit more interested in Njoku. I'd probably put him ahead of Freiermuth, even though we have Freiermuth with higher odds of being optimal. I think I'd put Njoku a little bit ahead of him as my favorite tight end because of the reduced ownership. Juwan Johnson certainly in play. I think we have 5 tight ends that are in play. I mean, maybe more than that who are in play, but clearly we have Njoku, Freiermuth, Juwan Johnson, and Hayden Hurst was big target of Bryce Young week 1. You see that often with rookie quarterbacks. They like to target their big tight end. Hayden Hurst, I think, could benefit, and also the weak receiving core for Carolina. Hayden Hurst might be like the most targeted or second most targeted pass catcher on this team for Carolina. Tough matchup, but he is 4,000. So I think those 4 clearly in play. I already mentioned Taysom Hill, I think is interesting as just a could break the slate wide open Millie maker kind of option. And then if you really wanted to get weird with some other tight ends, you could play Harrison Bryant. It's not somebody that I feel wouldn't play him on a main slate, but on a 2-game slate, Harrison Bryant certainly live to score a touchdown. I actually think Darnell Washington is pretty interesting also. He was out there a good number of snaps last week, and I think that he's always live to score a touchdown. I think he's a red zone threat. So I do think Darnell Washington is somebody who's going to get virtually no ownership, could score a touchdown. At 2,700, that might be enough. Like it's like, especially because you need to play a tight end. This is a 2-game slate. You might not have any super high scoring tight end. So if you get the 2,700 guy who scores a touchdown, that might set you apart. So I do think that Darnell Washington is in play as just like kind of an off the board play. Not a lot of people are going to get to. Harrison Bryant similarly. Jordan Akins, I guess I could throw into that bucket as well. So I think I guess those are a few more of those guys that are like Millie maker plays that like could really set you apart in the Millie maker. Low likelihood, but probably more likely than their ownership would indicate. I'd say Darnell Washington probably my favorite, followed by Harrison Bryant, followed by Jordan Akins, and then if you want to play Foster Moreau, I guess would be in that group also.
Yeah, Foster Moreau's he's not a bad player. It's just he wasn't targeted last game, didn't get a ton of opportunities. I would say the Freiermuth spot. You know what the problem is? It's when you start looking at some of these guys, you go, all right, well. Are they overpriced? It feels, and right. Matt had mentioned something funny today. He was like, yeah, you can play a bunch of Tyler Higbee. I'll just play the same guy for 2,900. And what he's saying is not this slate specific, but so many of these guys are very, very similar in projection, despite being way different in price point.
True. Yeah. It's, the more that we're talking about it, the more I'm talking myself into lowering my exposure to the Njoku Freiermuth of the world, even though I think that there's clearly a tier. There's a 4-player tier that starts with David Njoku, goes to Freiermuth, Juwan Johnson, Hayden Hurst. But the more that we're talking about it, the more I'm thinking, yeah, but like it's a 2-game slate. None of these guys are slam dunks. Like they're pretty good tight ends in Njoku and Freiermuth, but none of these guys are slam dunks. So it's very possible that none of those 4 scores more than like 4 or 5 fantasy points, in which case it really opens the door for, say, all those guys, max out at 4 or 5 fantasy points. Darnell Washington has 1 catch for 10 yards and it's a touchdown.
Yeah,
suddenly
right.
He has 8 points. He's cheaper than all of them. He has more fantasy points than all of them. And he's like virtually 0 owned. You really can set yourself apart really quickly. And then if Darnell Washington, maybe he's the big red zone threat that they need in there. Obviously, they do have Freiermuth, so maybe not. But if he certainly could be, like you see in on the Chargers with what's his name? I'm blanking on the name of the backup tight end. But same thing could happen where he could vulture 2 touchdowns in a game. You're not gonna really be shocked by that, and nobody's
Donald
gonna own
Parham,
him.
you're talking about?
Donald Parham, yeah, it's exactly what I was talking about. So I do think that these secondary tight ends who like don't project as well, pretty unlikely, but like you could really set yourself apart because you need to play a tight end, and it's very possible that none of the guys that everybody else is playing do anything, and you could quickly set yourself apart with a touchdown from one of these guys. And it's similar to Showdown. We've seen it a million times. The backup tight end always alive to vulture a touchdown.
With a slate where you have literally you want to hear the implied totals for these teams today, Neil? Just because I find it interesting. The implied totals are currently sitting at 21 for New Orleans, 18 for Carolina, 21 for Cleveland, and 18.5 for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's low. So one touchdown from one of these backup tight ends, like that might be the only touchdown you get from that team.
It's not completely out of the realm of possibility. Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. Tight end is bad. Tight end has been bad on main slates. With 13 games.
That's last week, especially. Yeah. I mean, this week we had, I guess on main slate, we didn't have TJ Hawkinson on the main slate this week. So yeah, it's been rough out there.
Was very good. But Kelsey was disappointing for what you're paying.
Yeah. Scored
Mark
one touchdown,
Andrews,
didn't do much else.
Yeah. Just once you get past that tier too, it's that tier as well, I should say. It is hideous, man.
Yeah, it really is.
I'll tell you this for defense. I don't really have any preference whatsoever. If you wanted to play an ownership game here, I think that's entirely reasonable. But I think you could make an argument that every one of these defenses is fine. Even the Panthers, Saints, Browns, Steelers, Panthers. They're at 36, 25, 22, 16% projected ownership. That's where we have them on the stochastic ownership tools. Do you have any pushback on that?
No, I 100% agree with you that all of them are fine. If I were to differentiate, I did notice that Kenny Pickett has, I believe, 11 interceptions in 13 career starts or something like that. So, taking the defense against the quarterback who throws more interceptions, generally a route that I like to go. And we have the Browns at 25% ownership, so lower than New Orleans, a little bit cheaper. So I think the Browns probably the one place that maybe I'd think about getting above weight to the field. But honestly, I'm going to be playing some of each of these defenses, not really letting defenses dictate my night, not taking any huge stands.
By the way, you were right. We weren't getting the 500. We were getting the 700 likes.
700 likes. My God.
688, but
you guys are animals. Thank you.
Pretty good stuff, huh?
Pretty good.
Any other thoughts that we have? We still have a couple minutes to go. I just got my lineups in under the gun, baby. One of the things that I noticed is I got a lot of Kenny Pickett.
Did you? Yeah, and I mean,
I'm not totally. I'm fine with it. Like Watson. Totally. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm disagreeing with you. Yeah, go. You go ahead. I'm agreeing with you 100%. He's viable.
Like once Watson came back from the suspension last year, he sucked. You would think, a whole offseason and everything, hey, he'll get better. I know the weather wasn't great last week, so I think Watson could still be fine. I have plenty of him in best ball too, Neil. I would like him to be.
Sure.
For sure. But at the same time, what if Pittsburgh at home, what if Brandon Katz, Dave is a homer, Pickett is trash. Well, you are a moron, my friend, because I'm an Eagles fan. Yeah, all of these guys, Derek Carr in primetime, how many times have we seen that go wrong? Rookie quarterback and Bryce Young, Deshaun Watson still not real. It's kind of up in the air. So I just look at Pickett as another one of the guys today, another one of these guys in a group of quarterbacks that I don't think anyone is all that interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. I like Kenny Pickett just fine. Like I said, I'm spreading out my quarterbacks. It is really hard. You build different builds with different quarterbacks. I actually only have 10% Bryce Young, so I'm slightly above weight to the field. Would have liked a little bit more. And then I just have 30% each of the other quarterbacks. I am not taking any hardcore stands here. If I were building a single entry lineup for me, it would be Deshaun Watson. I think that he does have the highest floor and the highest upside, but it's like really close between all of those three: Deshaun Watson, Derek Carr, Kenny Pickett, I think. And then Bryce Young is more of just a contrarian play.
You remember one of the debates where Megyn Kelly said to Trump, she's like, "You've called women fat pigs and this," and he goes, "Only Rosie O'Donnell." Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that?
No.
I feel like I should explain the chat if someone's like, "Dave, you talk poorly to people, I'd say only Brandon Katz.
Right. That's the perfect use of that.
I think he's the only one.
Well, because he comes in and he's like, you guys are idiots. Your takes are dumb. Like,
just come in with come in as a normal human being and disagree with us. I love when people disagree in chat personally.
That's totally
makes
fair.
the shows better.
Exactly. Feel free to disagree. You don't need to call us idiots though.
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
Oh God.
It's so funny. Anyway, you guys are the best for real. Appreciate you. Have a great night tonight. I hope one of us takes something down and we can talk about it and all of us brag with each other and celebrate instead of commiserate. When we come back, Neil and myself on Wednesday with the Ownership and Top Stack Show, strategy show. We got first look tomorrow. Stoked for that. Take a look at week 3. We got marathon matchup show on Thursday. We got the sim strategy show on Friday. Neil's back on Saturday with the tournament show. And then it all culminates with a wild 3.5 hour deeper dive live before lock live stream. You guys are the best. I appreciate you for real. Neil does too, even though he doesn't think anyone can find the like button.
Oh, I'm just impressed that you did.
Yeah, 735, brother.
Very nice.
Follow Neil at PlayerQDFS, me at Laffy_D, and shout out to Jordan Klein. Hey, the unsung hero around here, always working behind the scenes. This dude pulls like 4 straight hours doing these shows, working the controls. So give your boy a shout out next time you see his face on stream. We'll see you guys back here. Good luck tonight. Peace.